Hello everyone, and welcome from me, Curtis Hutchinson and Philip Nothar, to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast. This episode is a supplier special dedicated to Tjekvik, the supplier of intelligent self-service technologies for dealer after-sales departments across Europe, including the UK, where early adopters include Virtue Motors, Group 1 and Mercedes-Benz Stockport, Europe's largest Mercedes dealer. Here to discuss the business and how it is helping transform after-sales customer service and workflow is Business Development Director Nick Pratt. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Hi guys, hello.
Hi Nick, and welcome. So to begin with, let's start to think about, before we look at some of the after-sales solutions you're providing. Can you just give the listeners some background on the business, just to give them a sort of where you are, where you've come from, and what it is?
Cool, yeah, no problem. We're a Danish company, which accounts for the funny name. Although when you say it, it's a lot makes it much clearer than when you first look at it in print. We started in 2015 when our founders, who both worked in the automotive sector, realized that they were facing more and more pressure at the beginning and the end of the day with customer volumes. And there's a very nice picture which we show as part of our sales presentation, which just shows an actual queue at a business in Copenhagen. And so what they resolved to do was say, how can we affect this? Because we can't keep recruiting people. And so they thought, okay, well, let's see how we can digitize this process. And that's how we came about. We started off with a kiosk to collect keys, and we became our digital colleague. So we've been going, as I say, since 2015. We are across the whole of Europe. We're also into the Middle East and lastly Australia.
Some good coverage there, and I'm glad I left Curtis initially to do the reference to Tjekvik, and we knew how to say it. But I think just as a brief follow up, I mean, the UK. I mean, when did you launch in the UK, and how is it going? What sort of coverage have you got with in terms of dealerships and rooftops now across the UK dealer sector?
Well, the UK is our biggest market. We started in 2019, and our very first customer was the Halliwell Jones Group, quickly followed by Mercedes-Benz Stockport, you mentioned, and Group 1. We have about 1,600 dealerships globally, and over 500 of those are in the UK. And the UK has really been a very good market for us, who've really embraced digital technology and self-service.
That's pretty impressive coverage in the UK then, Nick. For the benefit of listeners, can you explain how Tjekvik solutions actually improve customer service?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about helping three groups. We talk about helping the customer, helping the service team, and helping the overall business. And the real benefit from our system for the customer is providing them with choice. So it allows the customer to choose how they want to check in and out. And they can do that from home, because we send them emails, SMSs, and notifications through brand apps. So the night before they arrive, they can actually simply check in from home. So it really does allow them to choose how they want to interact with the dealership, and it saves them time, because we all know it's stressful dropping your vehicle off in the mornings. If you've checked in at home the night before, then they can actually use the kiosk to drop their keys off. So it makes it a really quick and easy process for the customer. And of course, because they can do that at the end of the day, it saves them time. So we're really looking to provide more choice for the customer, not forcing them down a self-service route, because it's up to the customer to choose how they want to interact.
And just out of interest, Nick, what's the typical split between those customers who prefer to check in at home rather than in the dealership?
Well, we're currently running around about 56% of customers who are offered the opportunity to check in from home, taking that up. So, and of those 31% of the total volume of customers go on to actually use the check-in facility at the dealership. So it's a really high volume of customers looking to take on board that home check-in process. But when they arrive on site, less people actually use the kiosk to complete that process, but it's still a high number, over 30%.
That's interesting. And of those customers that do use the kiosk in the showroom, have you got any data on whether or not they continue to do that, when they come back into the dealership, subsequent visits?
Yeah, I mean, we'd only have sort of the data that shows us over time our volume of kiosk check-in is growing.
Yeah.
So when we first launched, probably in 2019, we were about 17%. 2020, 21, 22, it's grown and grown and grown till it's running at about 31% now. And in the UK is again the largest user of the kiosk check-in. In other markets, it's less so.
Yeah, I mean, I have background of running dealerships, so from a dealership perspective, how does Quick sort of, in terms of the solutions and thinking about that, the after sales staff, the counter, the receptionist, things like this around efficiencies and helping them?
The the best way I can describe it is by how one of our customers described it back to me. He said, "This is the best digital colleague a service advisor can ever have because they don't go sick, they don't have holidays, and they don't have a boyfriend and girlfriend that they're texting all the time." So, what,
As a previous general manager, dealer principal, I know exactly where you're coming from with that one, Nick.
So what we for a service advisor, it's great to have an additional resource that you can use. So if you can use that to actually manage the queues in the morning, it frees up your time, your personal time to deal with those customers. Having been a service advisor many years ago, I know what it was like when you were sat with a customer in front of you, and then you're looking over their head and you can see a queue of people. And so you don't deliver the best possible service to that customer who's in front of you. And those customers know that as well. So actually, if you can take 30% of the customers away to self-serve, then you've got 30% more time and you can deliver a better quality service to those customers. So as an advisor, it's a great to have a digital colleague who's helping you to deliver a better level of service. And for the dealership, it's better because your customer sat is going to improve because customers have got the choice in there, and you've got a higher level of satisfaction with your team members. So there's less stress for all parties, both the customers and the advisors.
And Nick, looking specifically at the kiosks, in your experience, where are they typically located, and how do they actually work? Because I've seen the video on your website, and to me, it looks similar to what I would expect to see in an airport, for instance.
Absolutely, it's the kiosk itself. The location is really key. That if you go into a McDonald's now, it's like dodging the kiosk to get to the counter. So we don't want that to be the way for the dealerships. So what we want the dealers to have is say, okay, make it really clear to the customer that they have the option of self-service. So we guide them and we provide nudging towards that. You clearly identify a digital service reception area. So when the customer arrives on site, they can see that they've got a choice. They can follow the traditional path and go and sit at a desk, or they can go and use the digital service reception solution. And the idea behind our kiosk is that it's got a large touch sensitive screen that's really clear and easy for the customer to see. And it's apparent what it is. And so you've got the individual lockers are important for us, because then the customer knows and they can see where their keys are being placed. And also when they're collecting their vehicle at the end of the day, they just wait, one of the lockers pops open and they can take their keys. So we've worked really hard on our kiosk in looking at how it looks and feels and making sure it doesn't look out of place in a showroom environment.
And how many kiosks would dealers typically need? I'm assuming it's very much dependent on how big the showroom is, how big the workshop is.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes from sort of one kiosk. And what we say is you've got to have quite low volumes to do that. So anything more than 30 throughputs a day, you want to be establishing a real digital area and having 2 kiosks. And the business you mentioned at the beginning, which is Mercedes-Benz Stockport, they operate with 6. So they have 6 indoor kiosks and they process their customers and allow them to go through that. So it's about, because what you don't want to do is replace a queue at a desk with a queue at a kiosk.
Yeah.
So that's the worst thing that you can possibly do. But you know, we're flexible because it's our software that is really the brains, and the kiosk is just a way to collect the keys. So you know, it's not exponential. If dealers add more kiosks on, they don't keep increasing their costs and doubling it up. You know, we just charge what it costs us for the kiosk, because the software is the same.
Yes, yeah, and the kiosks. I mean, you've talked about them being located within the showroom, but you can locate them outside as well, can't you?
You can, and we've just launched our own outdoor kiosk, and it's going very well. And interestingly, it's not been taken up in the past as much in the UK market, despite the fact we did some research recently that said 38% of the customers we surveyed want to drop off and collect their keys outside of the traditional after sales opening hours. So that leads you into that people would like a 24/7 solution. Of course, our kiosk is accessible when the showroom's open, so it's available on Saturday afternoons and Sundays. But actually, a lot of customers would like a 24/7 solution. The biggest
Yeah,
barrier to that is probably access to the dealership site,
Yeah.
because of
yes,
the barriers come down. Where's the
yeah.
customer park their vehicle, and
Yeah.
how's it going to be secured, and who's responsible for it?
And we talk about, you shared some of the stats before about performance and check-ins, and I mean, is the demand? I presume the demand is increasing. I mean, you've mentioned obviously in terms of your global customer base, number of dealerships in the global market, and the share in the UK, and some of those dealer groups being fairly well sized in terms of Group One, Halliwell Jones, and you mentioned the LSH dealership over in Stockport. I mean, is this demand increasing? Is it continuing to increase because of, one, the efficiency from the dealer perspective, and as you mentioned earlier, that customer service level, as well, but actually from a customer perspective, that you just touched on there, the flexibility to be able to in and out, not have to wait. They can do it, check in, drop the keys into the unit, and they're on the way to work and whatever they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it? I mean, year to date, we've done 1.1 million self-service interactions in the UK alone, and that's growing at a rate of probably, if you take a rolling 12 months, we're probably like 120, 130% each month. And that's without factoring in the growth that we've got as we add more dealerships in there. So definitely customers are more and more into the self-service element. Um, and it's like, we talk about the always on society. Well, that's how people are these days. So, even my 85-year-old mother is always on her phone.
Yeah.
So, if they receive an SMS or an OEM brand app notification to say, would you like to check in? They'll do it. They'll do it because they see that it saves them some time. So, and the dealer groups see that the benefit of this as
Mm.
well. There's not many dealer groups who look at this and say, okay, this is an alternative, a cost saving exercise around service advisors and service resources. What they see it as is as a necessary way to deal with the growth that they're seeing. And if you look at things like the EV content of a service visit is around 43% lower than a traditional fossil fuel vehicle. So you're going to need to see more and more EVs to deliver the same labour sales and the same part sales, but you can't keep exponentially increasing the number of service advisors you have. So actually providing a digital solution for an always on customer base is the answer.
And you mentioned earlier about UK in terms of that out of hours. Do you see market dynamic differences between the UK and some of those other markets that you currently operate in terms of the usage of the system, the out of hours, the wanting those Saturday afternoon, Sundays, and things like that? Because we know that consumer behaviours are different in different marketplaces.
Absolutely. I mean, out of hours and 24/7 is much bigger in continental Europe. In Germany, Austria, and Central and Southern Europe, it's very much a demand from there, and they have some very simple solutions which they've been using for years in markets like Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. So they definitely see that as a differentiator for us in there. But you also see differences in terms of the take up of home check-in by market, and the kiosk usage, because it depends. So in Germany, for example, service advisors are generally and historically were technicians, and they were very much seen as being my technician rather than a service advisor, which you might see in the UK, who doesn't necessarily need to have that level of technical skill. So in a Mercedes dealer, for example, we see a much slower take up of the kiosk check-in, because they are used to going and sitting with their technician and having a technical dialogue with them. But that's changing over time as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, we were talking before the show, and the head office being based in Copenhagen, and I've been Copenhagen for a number of years now for holiday, and the work-life balance over there is entirely different, isn't it, to the UK in the way they operate, the finishing times and things like that. So you think this is what some of this is blended into in terms of those market dynamic differences?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. One of the most embarrassing situations I had was when I was doing my sales pitch to a German dealer, and I was talking about actually enabling the customer to drop off and collect their vehicle on a Sunday. And he looked at me very straight-faced and said, "We don't open on Sundays." And I was just because coming from a UK background where
Yeah.
99% of the business is open on Sundays in the showroom and it's a selling environment, in that area of Germany, no, at midday on a Saturday, the business closes. So there's all sorts of different dynamics that you have to take into consideration in here. And some of the markets that surprise us all the time, like Poland. Poland is a really digitized business. They really get self-service. They get the home check-in element of it. But at the same time, they have a cash machine in their showroom because they want people to pay in cash. So it's quite interesting market dynamics we come across all the time.
And Nick, you've, as you've outlined, you've had some strong uptake from a number of small, medium, and large franchised groups across the UK. What feedback are you getting from them in terms of some of those improved efficiencies that you were talking about?
The feedback is invariably positive. They all see the benefit from this. They see the benefit in terms of customer satisfaction, because they want to offer their customers a choice. They see the benefit in terms of staff satisfaction as well, and they also see it. There's been high pressure post COVID probably around service advisor turnover and replacing those. And one of our biggest customers said, I'm not going to replace any service advisors out of this, but it helps me in that I don't have to recruit anymore. So
Yeah.
they see those efficiencies coming through. And the other thing is that, we consistently prompt customers to buy added value items, which the dealers set themselves. And again, year to date, we've sold just over 3.4 million pounds worth of added value items. So where a service advisor won't necessarily ask the question and offer the aircon refresh, the software does it every time, because it doesn't look at the customer and think, oh, I'm not sure they're going to say yes or no to this. It just asks them the question. So the dealerships benefit from that. And we're also, we have launched. We also ask questions as well as added value items. So we've generated over 65,000 service plan requests. So you're helping the dealership to retain the customer from that. And some of our dealers have added in a vehicle valuation request, and we've had over 40,000 responses to that. So you're driving sales activity because the software is asking all those questions, which you'd always love a service advisor to ask, but they either don't have time or they don't have the inclination to ask those questions.
And I think, Nick, you've actually highlighted something that's fairly key here, in that these kiosks, they can actually be, I don't know if programmed is the right term, but they can offer bespoke solutions for any given dealership, can't they? So if a dealer is promoting maintenance plans, service plans, extended warranties, or whatever for that particular month or period, that can be factored in.
Absolutely, and I would say this about our software, wouldn't I? But actually, if I looked at the weather forecast for tomorrow and saw it was going to rain, I could turn on an added value item around windscreen wipers or windscreen washer fluid. It's
That,
that simple and easy to do it. Um, and the other thing that we're just launching, it will be this quarter, is something we call smart rules, because previously you'd set the questions and you'd say, okay, is it a fleet customer, is it a retail customer, is it a waiting customer, and then you'd ask questions based on that. Well, now as EV vehicles increase, you don't want to be offering top up oil to an EV user. So we've developed something we call smart rules, which means the dealers can actually put in there and they can say, okay, taking Volkswagen, for example, is the model ID. If it is an ID model, then don't ask that question.
yeah.
So the EV user won't get shown top up oil, but they might get shown something around battery insurance or something else that's in there. So all the time we're developing our software to be more sophisticated and to allow the dealers to create much better customer journeys.
And in terms of, we're talking a lot about the UK. In terms of your aspirations for the UK, how is the current rollout looking, and how much growth do you plan over the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, we'd like to be in every single dealer group in the UK. That's our ambition. We've got some of the bigger dealer groups signed up. You mentioned them, Group One, Virtue, and there's some good news coming very shortly about some activity we've got with probably three out of the top five other dealer groups that are there. So, and we all know there's consolidation in the sector, and that is benefiting us to an extent.
Yeah.
So I think I'd be disappointed if we hadn't doubled in size in the next 12 to 18 months in the UK.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, just on the earlier conversation, comments around that efficiency, the digital partner to the service receptionist, you can see where this is going in the future. And we've not even talked about agency model and the relationship between the OEM and the retailer as we know it, and where this will help in that whole relationship, because the OEMs can get heavily involved from a manufacturer perspective in terms of their point of sale to the customers in that service department. And I mean, you've touched on it a little bit there, where you are at heart a tech business, and you've touched on that smart rules and how it can help that that innovations and developments in terms of you talking there about the oil turning things on in the winter, so you can start doing the winter checks. As we all know, we've been in the industry long enough that every year you get the winter health checks start to come out. But where do you see this now starting to head? We assume that this will start to roll out. You get that coverage in the UK dealer. Do you see this being able to remain purely in the automotive sector, or do you think it'll go into other markets, or does it go into some of those quick fit Halford areas as well as this check-in, this efficiency and things like
that? We think that there's the opportunity. We're going to stay automotive. Is one of the answer to part of your question. We're not interested in going outside the automotive space, because Christian, our founder, describes himself as an automotive geek. He's been in there for so long that he wants to stay in there. But we do see opportunities in the independent and fast fit sectors, but it's a different marketplace, because a lot of the independents and the fast fit, it's about the technician meeting the customer. So actually, where does self-serve fit within that? Well, actually, it does fit in there, because you can still have a kiosk for checking back out again, and also 24/7, because once your business is shut as a fast fit business, it's shut. So why don't you offer the 24/7 approach to them? Generally, those sites have got open parking, so they don't have the problem that franchise dealers do. So we do see that, and now that we've got our own outdoor hardware, we're going to start marketing into that sector, because that's where we see the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that. You can see the opportunities there, can't you? Because there is that the 24/7, that efficiency, accessibility from the consumer to be able to do that, and the that customer service and efficiency within the business themselves in terms of labour and resource to be able to do it. So yeah, it's fascinating.
It's really interesting, because there's a few franchises which have got those personal service technicians, and they've been trying to push that with dealerships, and that actually ignores the fact that what does the customer want? Not every customer wants to go and stand underneath their vehicle and look at it. So we've got some dealers in the UK and in Europe who've got those personal service technicians, but they've also integrated the self-service element. So you're increasing and enhancing the choice for the customer. So you're not pushing them down one route of a personal service technician. You're not pushing them towards a digital service reception solution. What you're doing is giving the customer choice. And I think at the end of the day, that's what everybody really wants. As a consumer, when I go to the supermarket, sometimes I'll want to actually go and self-serve, and other times I want somebody else to process my shopping, and I just want that choice. And that's where we come from, is providing the best digital self-service solution, but only for those customers who choose to use it, and allowing dealers to deliver the best solution they possibly can, bespoke to their own franchise and business needs.
Well, Nick, many thanks for joining us and for sharing what would have been some fascinating insights on how dealers are using tech to boost customer satisfaction and retention. If any of our listeners want to hear more about how Tjekvik can help their businesses, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
If they just go on to our website, which is www.tjekvik.com, and just click on the contact us, and one of the team will be in touch, and we can come and do on-site demonstrations, or we can do things online. So we're more than happy to do that with anybody who's interested.
Yeah, and it's probably just worth adding that Tjekvik is Tjekvik. I hope I've got that right.
You have.
Yeah.
You have. Well done.
I mean, needless to say, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, Nick. I mean, it's a fantastic area that you're getting involved with, and I mean, the future growth and opportunities is just there in terms of that efficiency and tech and everything else that's coming. So it remains me to say, thank you for joining us today, Nick, on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been a pleasure in sharing some of your insight into the different markets as well between the UK and some of those different European markets that you operate within. But you've been listening to the Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.